Chapter 2.10, Part 3. Our next work is a performance piece by Marina Abramovic. She's probably one of the most famous performance artists ever. One of her pieces was she had a partner for a long time, Ule, and they were romantically involved as well, but they were artistic collaborators. She was always kind of the driving force. He wasn't as famous. But anyway, he participates in this piece, and you can watch that. And it's very emotional. You can watch that on YouTube if you wish. But her piece with Ule, the last piece she did with him, they walk the Great Wall of China and they meet in the middle. So they each walk, I don't know, 600 miles or something like that. Her things that she sets up are quite difficult and challenging physically. And this is one of them. It seems simple to sit in a chair, right? But a hardwood chair for, 8 hours a day without moving really, or smiling or talking, that's pretty rough. Now, there may have been some breaks. I don't know the exact details of this, and I think it was meant to be a bit mysterious as well. But people lined up and they had 3 minutes with her to gaze into her eyes, and there were emotional responses that really varied. So it was an energy exchange, and they're extreme in their bodily endurance. That's a better way to say it for sure. For 3 months, she did this piece, and it was during a retrospective of her work at MoMA. So they had all her other pieces reenacted, I should say, by other people. Other performance artists took on some of her famous pieces and did them while she did this. Because that's one of the issues with performance artists. If it really is your body and your interaction with someone, it makes it very difficult to do that as long as, a painting is on a wall for decades, if not hundreds of years. And performance, you're limited to yourself and how much time you can actually physically be there. So it makes it a little tricky. So she sat there at the table every day for 3 months. And then they would come. I don't know that it's as long as they wished. I think they got kind of pushed along because there was a massive line of people that wanted to do this. And they ran into the gallery to line up to do this. And then it was just silent sort of interaction, no talking or anything like that. It was an energy dialogue. That's what she was setting up. Okay, our next thing is going to be installation and environments. So an artist sometimes will recreate an entire space, an entire place in an artwork. Some pieces are site specific. So, like, say for instance, with Anne Hamilton, she did a piece in a denim factory that was abandoned. So she took a bunch of old jeans and piled them up relative to that denim factory to comment on the loss of jobs and labor force, no longer there in that space. So it's an immersive experience. And if you think about Beuys back with his Coyote, his pieces, even though they're performance-based, they were also somewhat installation-based. They're usually temporary, and not always, but usually temporary. And they're meant to sort of get away from the idea of you're buying a painting to put over your couch. From the 60s, a lot of artists were getting frustrated. The abstract expressionists were simply selling things that, had a monetary value because everybody recognized them at that point and popped them on top of their couch. And they were trying to go for a more true or sometimes spiritual experience. Kienholz wouldn't be one of those, but Beuys was sort of the father of that idea. Okay, so here we are with Kienholz with Barney's Beanery. It's called the Beanery. Barney's Beanery was a real place, and it used to be an artist hangout. And then it became kind of a corporate hangout for a long time. Businessmen ate there for a long time. I don't really know currently in LA who eats there, but it still exists. It's a place. But in his time, in 1965, 50 years ago plus, this was kind of what it looked like. Barney's Beanery is an old segment of a train. It's a train car, and it's narrow and skinny. And I think they've expanded it. But anyway, it was kind of a skinny, long place to eat and drink. It was a watering hole, meaning a bar. And so he recreates his friends and some of the personalities there, and some of it's actual, but he puts all these clocks instead of their faces. So the clocks instead of faces. Kienholz's work, it always seems like it has some kind of dripping goo all over it. It just, if you see this in a museum, and the hands, all this stuff is kind of gooey and textured. They're very sort of unclean and there's kind of an icky feel to them for sure. Just for other reasons because they're emotionally strange, but also because of that idea that he sort of dripped paint all over everything. So he recreates this scene, and this is in a museum. This one's in the Netherlands in Amsterdam. Um, this particular piece, but there are in almost every American museum has a Kienholz, and this one has a special segment to it. It even has odors that were found in a bar, and he gives the museum a little can of bar scent, if you will, what a bar would scent. I don't exactly know the particulars of this, but they're supposed to replace the scent so it continues to be stinky. So he's breaking down barriers between art and life, and he's replicating something that he treasures, and he's transforming the space itself into an assemblage. Okay, so we have assemblage here. We have a bunch of parts put in together into a box-like structure. Assemblage isn't always in a box, but it tends to be. Okay, Ai Weiwei. Now, Ai Weiwei is, now you'd have to check how this may change, but anyway, he's number one in the art world, contemporary art world. He is the top of the heap. He's a big deal. Chinese artist, does not live here. He lives in China, and he also does pieces about his arrests in China. That happens. And just so you know, Yayoi Kusama, who's in Japan, is one of our top artists, top 10 in the world as well right now. So these artists are still active now. Ai Weiwei does a lot of political and socio-political pieces. This one is commenting on the misperception of the value of the Chinese urn. It's more complicated than that. He doesn't completely explain this, but this is called dropping of, well, you're looking at two pieces really. The dropping of the Han Dynasty urn, and these are colored vases here. So these are two pieces in the Hirshhorn Museum. I actually got to see this show 2011, I want to say, or 12, it was still up. But it has to do with consumerism, commodification, appreciation and value, preservation and destruction, political commentary, and personal responsibility. So I'm quoting from the book on that. In the earlier work, a single valuable urn or vase is shown contrary to how we might expect it to be treasured, willfully being destroyed by the artist. So that's from the book, but what part of the research that I have read about this is that when we look at these urns, we think of them as very valuable because in Japan, each piece is handmade and it's a high art form like a painting. They're individualistic, but in China, they are mass produced, even in ancient times, 1,000 years ago plus. So they're not as valuable. They're actually consumer objects like you would find at Walmart in China. So one of them is the distinction between Japanese and Chinese pottery. And then and in both cases, he's devaluing this piece, if that makes sense. He's demystifying the idea that these should all be preserved because they're very mass produced. And these as well, that he paints over them, you can still kind of see the rough texture of the pot underneath, but he paints over them, commenting on, and you can kind of see these all do look pretty similar. They're not all the exact type of vase, but they're mass produced. They're mold made. They're not handmade. So it's something that is like a consumerist sort of a piece from the past of China, and he's commenting on today's consumerism as well. He deals a lot also now with immigration. He makes a lot of intense statements about the death of the Syrian people in boats coming to shore in Europe, and he's a very powerful artist. His work doesn't have a lot of visual similarity. I mean, these pieces are visually similar, but generally speaking, his work is very different. Each piece is quite different. So he uses materials in an unexpected way. He's an activist, and he's destroying a valuable artifact. But we also kind of know he's trying to say this isn't as valuable as we think. And he's covering these ancient vessels with modern industrial paint, trying to point out that modern day China is the same as the past China, where it's all about mass production and lack of individuality.